Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Dr. Minton. But I'm really excited about bringing her on to share a lot of the great knowledge that she has behind the scenes of what music can actually do for kids in schools. So let's all welcome Dr. Minton.
All right, so using music to increase students' self-regulation. I'm just going to play as a little opener song here. This is the title track, and this is a picture of Calum. Just a little freshen up overture to the talk today. All right, so we're going to talk today about how can you use music to increase student self-regulation and therefore both their mental health capacity and also their cognitive, help them express their cognitive strengths. And there's some really interesting research in this area that most of us never learned when we were in graduate school or undergraduate school or whatever our training has been. So I'm so excited to be here and share this with you. I do want to talk a little bit about ethics. So I do want to make the statement that I am not benefiting from the sales of this music in any way. All the money is going to Calum Graham on this. I did underwrite most of the cost of the album, but I didn't want it to be, because I collected data on it and I'm going to be recommending it to people, I didn't want to have any material interest in the album. So that's ethical statement. Okay, a bit about us. Calum Graham. He's an amazing guy. Calum is one of the best. He's a world-class fingerstyle guitarist. He's toured all over the world. And as Jay mentioned, he's touring in Australia right now. He's extremely versatile, and it was such a thrill to be able to work with him. And so that's Calum on the left, and then I'm on the right there. And way back in the Paleolithic era, I was actually a music major with this beautiful instrument, a pipe organ, which is extremely popular and everyone wants to play. But I left music and became a psychology major and 2 PhDs and a bunch of other stuff later. Here we are, kind of reconnecting music and psychology back together. I've worked extensively in rural mental health and with Alaska Natives, also with severely emotionally disturbed kids and their families, and then more recently with gifted and highly gifted kids. Done a lot of work. My PhD is actually in child clinical psychology, child clinical and developmental psychology. So why should we learn about music? Well, it's quite interesting that globally, people listen to about 2.6 hours of music per day. This is a huge amount of input that we're putting into our systems. And can we harness, is this input good? Is it bad? Can we harness this input to increase well-being? This is what we'll be talking about today. So my goals for you are that you know enough about the research to think about this on your own, to answer questions of parents and students when they're like, why are we doing this? Or why are you doing this? And to convince you to use music to enhance both self-regulation and performance of your students. And then secondly, I also would like you to know how to use the music on the USBs that are being provided to you from the State Department of Education so that you can use that in your own work with students. Now, before we talk about music, we have to talk about other stuff because music doesn't do everything. It's not a treatment in and of its own. Many foundational activities need to be there to help our kids function as best as they can. And those are things you already know, but it's always good to just remind yourself of them. One is good nutrition, good sleep, and exercise. And we'll talk about some ways not to use music a little later on. We're not going to talk a lot about this, but I did want to just mention it at the beginning that although music affects us as individuals, it does have a huge social effect. So music is a way we communicate with each other, and it facilitates human contact. It actually activates the part of the brain that's involved in social relationships, and so it increases empathy. And this is really important if you're a classroom teacher or you're a cook in the lunchroom, or you're trying to work with kids to start to create a beautiful kind of school climate. So it's very interesting that music itself increases parts of the brain that help us relate in an empathetic way to other people. All right, we have to do a little bit of science here so that you know what I'm talking about. So we're going to talk about a quantitative EEG. So what is happening in our brains when we listen to music? Well, we have our neurons in our brain are cells that fire, and these cells fire in different patterns depending on what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to do one set of math problems, they're firing in a certain pattern. If you're reading a book, they're firing in a different pattern. If you're staring out the window, not listening to what the teacher says, they're firing in a different pattern. And we can actually use music to help create the type of wave that we want. So I'm just going to give you a quick introduction to these waves. And we have created a booklet that goes with the music to explain this to you so that you can pick out music that creates the wave state that you want. So here's a delta wave. Delta is a very slow wave. It is in your brain. It's when the neurons are firing 1 to 4 times a second. It's a very grounding wave, and kids who have trouble with transitions often are not making enough delta. So kids who, have trouble transitioning from one subject to another, or from the lunchroom to the classroom, or from the classroom to an assembly, oftentimes these kids are not making enough delta. And you may want to try some of the delta songs with these kids, which I will show you here a little bit later on, and see if that helps them with transitions. This is theta. Theta is a pre-sleep wave. It's a wave you make when you're kind of in a creative, zoned out state. It's also a very grounding, calming wave. This is alpha. Alpha is it's that Zen wave that you make, meditators make a lot of alpha. It's that kind of Zen calming wave. This is beta. Beta is that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed wave that you make when you're just on and you're listening to everything and it's all going in your mind and you're taking notes and everything is just working 100%. And then there's high beta or gamma. You'll see it as high beta often in what I put on the album. And this is a wave that's associated with both peak performance and also anxiety. So we'll look at both sides of that as we get down the road here. Now I want to tell you what we did when we made this album. So this is a raw EEG. EEG stands for electroencephalogram, and that is actually the neurons in your brain firing. And if you can see my cursor, if you look at any of these lines, when the little jagged edge is down, that means the neurons are firing, and when it's up, they're resting. And so we see an EEG like this. This is just someone's EEG. We have sensors. We have 19 sensors on their head. And you can see down here, this part of the head that has these big kind of waves that look like mountains is doing something different than this part of the head. This is the front part of the head and the back part of the head. And I mentioned those waves earlier. So we can actually break an EEG apart to see the component waves. So these are those slow delta waves that help you with transitions. These are the slightly faster theta waves that are that kind of pre-sleep, drowsy, creative state wave. These are alpha waves, Zen calming waves. These are beta waves, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed waves. And these are high beta waves associated with peak performance and anxiety. And then these are gamma, which are even fat. They're kind of high beta waves, gamma waves. Okay. So now you've had the little lecture here. Let's look at some brain maps. So these are actually brains of kids that have all been diagnosed with ADHD. And let me tell you how to interpret these, because we're going to look at how music changes these brains. So this is delta, theta, alpha, beta, high beta. So these are waves slow to high, and green is normal. Yellow and red means there's too much of that wave, and blue means there's too little. And if you don't remember anything from today, except for this, I will be super happy, because what I'd like you to notice is that although all these kids have the same diagnosis, which is ADHD, their brains look extremely different. And ADHD is a behavioral disorder. So we're looking at behavior, not at what's going on internally. And these kids all have something different going on internally. And because of that, they'll respond to different interventions in a different way. And any of you who have worked extensively with kids with ADHD will know this. You'll know, like, oh, we put this one kid on stimulant medication and it worked. And we put this other kid on stimulant medication and they went out the roof. So I'll talk about these briefly. And if you'd like to spend more time on them later, we can certainly come back to it. But as you can see here, this kid is making way too much alpha. And remember, alpha is that Zen meditative wave. So this kid is meditating in class, this first one here on the upper left, when they ought to be paying attention, they're off somewhere else. So these kids often get diagnosed as attention deficit hyperactive disorder inattentive type. And just as a quick thing, although we're not going to go into it today, these kids responded differentially to medication. So you would not want to put this kid on a stimulant med. These kids tend to do better on antidepressant medications. This kid below them, see all this excess high beta. This is someone who can't pay attention because they're super anxious. So we're going to play them more calming music. This kid here who's spaced out, we don't want to play them more calming music, right? They'll just space out even more. We want to play them something a little bit more activating. This kid over here, whose brain is kind of blue, needs a totally different intervention because this kid's brain is underpowered. So if I had this child, I would ask them what they're eating. Are they living on sugar and carbs? Are they not getting enough food? So this would likely be more of a nutritional intervention than anything else to be successful. And this kid here is more the classic ADHD that we think of when we think of ADHD. So this child actually probably would respond to a stimulant medication, but we may also want to use some of the enlivening music with them. So I think the take home on this, and there's other patterns of these brains associated with ADHD, but I think the take home from this is what we see externally with somebody, with a child or a student, may only partially reflect what's going on internally with them. And you can actually use music to help yourself find out what is really going on. So for example, if we play some of our music that makes beta and high beta to a kid like this, they're going to start to feel more and more agitated. And so you can actually make some differential choices with music for these different types of kids. All right. I just wanted to show you, I won't play through the whole thing on this, but I did want to show you briefly a live brain responding to music. So this is Calum Graham's song, The Nomad, which is a song that I really liked. And I was curious what would happen. So I went into the office and hooked myself up. This is what started me off on the whole thing here. And played the music to myself. This is, again, slow waves all the way up to fast waves here. So this is my brain live responding to a recording of the Nomad. So when I saw this, after I did it and I saw it, it was, remember, green is roughly normal, so you can see how my brain is extremely active and it's reacting very strongly to the music. And I actually sent this to a colleague of mine because it blew me away. And I said, just watch this and tell me what you think. And he called me up and he was like, that totally blew me away, how that music was changing your brain in such a powerful way. And so I'm like, well, am I just a one-off, or does this happen to other people too? So I got some other people, brought them to the office and had them listen to it and see what their brains are doing. So I said, wow, it isn't just me after all. Look at this person down here, all in the red and white means you're actually going off the scale here. Your brain is so active. So this is what got me started off on this and thinking, well, how can we use music? Can we use music to really change what the experience that a person is having? And so that was to recorded music. And we have done, Calum and I have a workshop that we do for people that want to get continuing ed credits for psychology or counseling. And I just wanted to play you this quick video of him playing live to a volunteer at one of our workshops. So does this work live? And this is the front of the brain on this one, the front and the back. So it's in a little bit different orientation. But she
Can you
asked
just
for a calming song. Yeah, Jay?
can you quickly just remind everybody what the colors mean? Somebody asked that
Yeah.
question.
No, yeah, I can. Thank you and please interrupt me. So this is green is roughly in the normal range. Yellow and red means you're making a whole bunch of that wave. White means you're making so much of that wave it goes out of the top. And blue means the neurons are shutting down. I love this song, but don't have time to listen to the whole thing. But I think the point is made here that it's really pretty clear the brain is responding to music in a very powerful way. But what about the body? Well, actually, let me just stop here for a minute. Do we have questions that you'd like me to address just at this point?
You can either type them in or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
All right. We don't.
One, autism versus ADHD difference.
Ah, yes. And I have that. So hang on. I'm so glad you asked that question. It's coming up. And I'm going to talk about depression, anxiety, ADHD, and autism spectrum. And then if you have questions about other disorders, I'd be glad to address those too. In our workshop's a 2-day workshop, so obviously we take a much deeper dive into this, but I would like to touch on those disorders. So it's pretty clear the brain responds to music in a very powerful way. But does the body itself respond to music? And it's quite interesting that the body actually has these intrinsic oscillators. I have brain here, but it's actually the brain and the body. And these things are like little clocks, and they perceive a beat and then they keep that beat going. And so, and here's just a quick picture of all the different genes involved in these body clocks. They're everywhere. They're in your brain, your kidneys, your liver, your skin. And when you play music, it actually starts to entrain these body clocks and they change what's happening internally in your body. So here's a really interesting study that was done in 97, one of the first ones where this guy monitored 12 measurements and music impacted all 12. So it impacted heart rate, it impacted time that your pulse was being transmitted to your ear and finger. It impacted how much blood was going to your finger. It impacted breathing. It impacted how deep you breathe, on and on. And I always have to take a quick little segue here and talk about neonatal intensive care unit babies. When you play music, actually either recorded or live, this was a study with live heart music, they made less cortisol, which is the stress chemical in the body. They had fewer apneas, which is when you stop breathing, and they had fewer oxygen desaturations. And I don't think I put this slide in here, but there was another study done where they actually these neonates in intensive care actually had better weight gain. So it's just amazing. And it, we just should be using music. It's such a cheap and easy intervention to have, and it has all these effects on the body. I did put this in because music, slow tempo music increases oxytocin, and oxytocin is that love chemical, right? It's the chemical that makes you feel connected to other people. Um, what's sort of interesting, I noticed there were a few nurses that signed up, and I would like to invite you to use music when kids show up in your office. Interestingly enough, several studies showed that music actually changes immune markers in a positive way and actually increases the efficacy of the immune system. So when you're sick, if you can play music to yourself, that's always good. But our bodies are meant to are meant to respond to music. And when we do this and we are around other people, we also begin to what's called entrain to them, where we begin to feel more and more connected to them. Okay, so now we know the brain and the body are being shaped by music. But does music help people with mental health conditions? So let's look at these, because whatever your role is in the school, you run across these kids all the time. So let's look at depression. So there are studies that have found that when music is used as an intervention for depression, just on its own, no other intervention, there are improvements in depression in the 40 to 50% range. Now, this is better than medication. And a wide range of interventions seem to work. There was actually a more recent meta-analysis done in 2020, and they actually found that listening to music had stronger effects than music therapy did in terms of improving depression. And 3 to 12 weeks seemed about the optimal amount of time to use a music intervention. And I remember years ago, I had a teenager in my office that was suicidal, and I didn't pick up on it at the time. It was kind of silly of me, but we found a piece of music that she wanted to listen to. And whenever she felt suicidal, she would play that piece of music to herself. And I really do believe it kept her alive, because she accessed it easily. She was totally into it. She was willing to do it. This went on for weeks and she did start to feel better. And it was just so exciting to see that. This is a really interesting study about depression. So these guys found that after 10 days of music therapy, both the depressed and the control group, so um, both people that were depressed and not depressed had better frontal measures of oxygen in their brains. So they got, whether you were depressed or not, you had more oxygen going to the front of your brain and your verbal fluency improved. So both people that were not depressed and depressed, their brains started operating better. And if you know about the frontal lobes, they're involved in planning, organizing, kind of responding to prioritization and things like that, things we call executive functioning. So it's kind of cool that music helped both groups. The depressed group actually did recover. They were worse than the control group in terms of the frontal part of their brain, and they did recover significantly with the use of music. So here's one of the songs on the album, and I want to play just a little bit for you because this song increases low beta. Now remember, beta is that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed wave, and if you're depressed, you have no energy, right? You can't get out of bed, and or you're just sort of sloughing through your day, just barely making it. And we don't want to get you hyper, but we want to increase calm, focused attention. And low beta is calm, focused attention. So this is the song that came out when we did our research to increase low beta. It's a great, this type of song is great to play too if because it's sort of a middle of the road song. So if you want to, if you're in a classroom or you're working with a student and you want them just sort of in the middle of self-regulation, this type of song would be good. And it has a little bit of a country feel for those of you that are into country. So that's that one. That type of vibe in music, and of course, it doesn't have to be this particular song, but once you kind of get the vibe of a song, you can maybe think of some other songs that you know that are in a similar category. So that's depression. Anxiety is kind of interesting because there are actually not very many studies on anxiety and music, which you would think is odd because many people have anxiety, especially right now. However, we do have a lot of studies in adults on what you call state anxiety, which is what you feel right before something is going to happen that you don't like, such as a test. And it actually shows that playing music before stressful events does have positive effects. So it is something to think about if we want to extrapolate from the literature on adults to kids. We could think about helping kids in these sort of anxious transition times or things they're anxious about by having them listen to music. And I do want to say that developmentally, there's a really interesting study done on rats. I'd love to see this done on humans, but it would be quite the event to do it, is when they exposed young rats to music for 2 hours a day, later on, when they had traumatic events happen, they did much better. They didn't respond to them as traumatically, and their ability to go back to normal was much quicker than those who were not exposed to the music. And BDNF on here, that stands for brain derived neurotrophic factor. And that is the chemical in the brain that grows new neurons. And so it's kind of interesting that this BDNF there was more of that in the brains, in the emotional centers of the brain, in the rats that had listened to music. And so you just really wonder whether early life exposure to music might really help kids as well in their ability to respond to stressful events.
Couple more
So,
questions real quick, Barbara.
sure.
First one is, I'm interested in the difference in effects on the brain if you are making the music, playing or singing, compared to listening to music.
Oh man, I love that question. And we don't completely know the answer to that. And I hope as the research goes on, we'll know more and more. So a lot of times in music therapy, where you actually have a trained music therapist, you will actually beat on a drum or learn to play an instrument or express yourself with music. And my thought is that is going to have a different effect than just listening to music. What's kind of interesting to me, so when you just listen to music, they call that music medicine as opposed to music therapy, because you're using music as a medicine, like sort of like a pill. And it's actually was kind of amazing to me how effective just listening to music was. But those of you who play an instrument or have done drumming or any of these other more active, even dance to music, it's encoding in a different way because you're interacting with the music in a different way. And I would love to see more studies on that, but we don't quite know the answer yet. I could speculate, but I won't go too far in that.
I have one more question. Is there specific music theory used to compose for specific wave types? For example, does tempo, key signatures, time signatures, instrumentation, etc., have direct correlation to specific types of waves?
Yes, great question. And what we did on this is I made calculations off of these waves on EEG. And then Calum and I sat down and it was so fun doing this. I can't even tell you. We sat down and I said, okay, so we want to make a delta wave here. Here's the parameters. So according to EEG, since we want to entrain that wave, it should be in this register using these frequencies, using this tempo, using this what you call timbre, the kinds of sounds the guitar can make. And we also had pipe organ and drums and all kinds of stuff coming in on this. So yes, we did. We had specific calculations. And so then we made the songs up and then took them to my office, and we had volunteers from the community, and some of my clients also volunteered and came in and listened and we collected their EEGs. And then if we hadn't hit on the wave, we went back to the drawing board and changed the song. But actually, oddly enough, most of the time we hit on one wave or the other. So yeah, these songs, I think that's what makes this work special, is it is data driven. And then having Calum, who's such an amazing musician, and the two of us worked together on this, it was just such a treat. But yeah, these are actually neuroscience informed music is really what it is. So we didn't just randomly go, oh, let's play something relaxing. We actually had a data set we were conforming to with that.
Just to remind everybody, I didn't say that at the beginning. At the end of this, I'll let you know how you can get a hold of your flash drive. I did get flash drives for every school district. Along with this flash drive is also the oh, what did I want to say, Barbara? What is
Booklet. The
yeah, the
booklet.
little booklet with yours, but then there's also a booklet that we're going to give you a link to because Dr.
Yeah.
Minton has actually updated it since she put it on the flash drive.
Yeah. And you'll really want to get that new booklet because it has much more information in it. It has which wave each song was making and the research that we did. And so you'll be able to use that information to customize your playing of the song to whatever type of situation or whatever type of student you're working with. Any other questions, Jay?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'll also mention that if you just want this for yourself, to use yourself, you can go to Calum's website. I think the downloads are live, so you can buy the download. We're just finishing up the CD order, so hopefully that'll be done in the next week or 10 days. So we'll have the CDs, and I believe he has a pre-order up there for the CDs if you want to get a CD.
And we'll put up all the links at the very end of this today.
Okay, great. So if you're anxious, so here's a song that makes theta a calming wave. So if you're really anxious, this might be a nice song for you to listen to, and I'll play a little excerpt from that. Right. I can't play too much of that because you'll all zone out and fall asleep and not listen to the rest of the presentation. But this was really such a powerful song when we collected our data. It's so interesting, and I just love this song myself. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the type of song for depression, a little bit about the type of song for anxiety, and I have more of these songs at the end. If we have time, I'd be glad to play them for you, at least snippets of them for you, and tell you which type of song might be good for what thing. But someone did ask about autism spectrum. What's really interesting is the literature findings are all over the place in this. And it's probably because, as you know, autism spectrum, the diagnosis itself is all over the place, right? So we have really severe people who can't function at all, clear to people that are doing well in life. So what I would say on this is that some studies did show, especially with less involved kids, that actually music improves social skills. With the more involved kids, it didn't seem to do that. And, you know, this is another whole hour presentation on its own, but remember that we talked earlier that music seemed to create oxytocin, right? That's that connecting chemical where you feel positive towards someone else. And it also seemed to bring back online the parts of the brain that perceived what we call the mirror neurons, where you perceive and take in what other people are doing. So I think for certain types of autism spectrum kids, especially those who are not super impaired, music could be very helpful. I think the more severe end of the spectrum, the jury is still out, and it would be interesting if anybody here's a special ed teacher and works with those more severe kids, it would be interesting for you to try some of this music with them and just see what you observe. Does it calm them down? Does it help them make transitions? Even if it's not improving social skills, it may be doing some other things. Now, back to ADHD here for a minute. So despite advice that people with ADHD should study and work in quiet places, this very interesting 2020 study had students with ADHD and students without ADHD read. And they had them read under 4 conditions: no background music, calm music with no lyrics, calm music with lyrics where someone's singing, and rhythmic music with lyrics. And they assessed reading comprehension and heart rate variability. And I won't get into heart rate variability, but let's talk about reading comprehension because that's always good in schools. And here's what they found. And I apologize for the blurriness of this slide, but these black, what do you call those, rectangles, are kids with ADHD, and this is reading comprehension on a 5-point scale. So here's when there's no music, and here's our non-ADHD kids. So they're really reading pretty well when there's no music. These guys, their reading comprehension isn't so great. When you play calm music to kids with ADHD, their reading comprehension goes up. When you play calm music with lyrics to kids with ADHD, their reading comprehension goes up. When you play rhythmic music to kids with ADHD, their reading comprehension goes up. So compared to no music, almost any kind of music helped the reading comprehension of kids with ADHD. And I just think this is such a fascinating study because you hear this from people with ADHD all the time, right? Now, here's our students without ADHD. Well, when we played them calm music, their reading comprehension goes down. Calm music with lyrics goes down. Rhythmic music goes down. So there's really a differential effect on music with kids diagnosed with ADHD and kids not diagnosed with ADHD. So it's a great example of why we need earphones and let our kids with ADHD, or at least experiment with them, listening to music while they're working. So here's a song that makes beta. Remember that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed wave. And so if we have a kid with classic ADHD, so that's that kid who's making excess theta, and probably this would work on that kid making excess alpha. So remember, alpha is that Zen meditative wave. So that kid is meditating when they're supposed to be working. Theta, that kid's brain is trying to fall asleep on them when they're supposed to be working. And so we want something a little more enlivening. So this is the song Resilience that we put together for that. So a little bit different vibe than the other one. And I see there's some more questions. Jay, do you want me to answer them here?
Not really questions, more comments, just comments that song gave them shivers, and another person's commented they also got goosebumps. Another one said, "Wow, that's amazing." Basically, when you were talking about the difference between ADHD and someone who is not ADHD, and the fact that the music improves comprehension. So,
Man.
more comments than actually questions.
Okay, great. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. And I hope you guys will email me afterwards. I'll give you my email at the end and let me know what you think because some of this stuff is just so amazing. And the thing that's cool about music is it's cheap. I mean, you can get on there and buy a download for 20 bucks. It's, the CDs will be slightly more, but it's just, wow, what a powerful intervention and it's easy to use and kids can take it home and use it. That's what really got me into this. I mean, I've been doing traditional and non-traditional psychological interventions forever, but even if this just helps a little bit, that's huge. Okay. I wanted to just show you because so we do play this. We can play this live. If you want a concert in your area, just let me know. But this is that same song. And this is someone's iPhone, so the fidelity isn't that great. But I wanted you to at least see Calum. I'm playing the acoustic. He's playing the working box. So much fun. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Just FYI, my family was at this concert, and they said it was phenomenal. My brother, sisters, and mom were all there, and they couldn't believe, the music. And we've all been fans of Calum's for a long time, but to hear it in the church, they said it was just outstanding acoustics and everything. So, again, kudos to you guys.
Thank you. I mean, it was fun. I did want to play you one. So this is the Delta song. And I want to play this to you and show you the powerful impact a song like this can have on the brain. So I was playing the guitar. I mean, I'm a student. Playing the guitar with Calum was like, oh my gosh. But I am a pipe organist, so I actually can play the pipe organ. And this is the Delta song. And I'm going to show you a child's brain after they listen to this song. And I'll just play the first part of it. Again, this is live. I've got the recording, which is much better fidelity. And unfortunately, the videographer was aiming at his camera close to the organ, but we'll take a look anyway. I'm not sure why it's doing that. But anyway, that's the song. So you get a feel for that. And
Quick
this
question.
is
hate to interrupt again, but this one says, so the delay waves would be more calming for people with ADHD or just people in general?
So the delta waves, it depends on what kind of ADHD they have. If they have that high beta type of ADHD, so remember on that one, here, I can actually go back to that slide, but maybe I'll wait and see if we have time. We might want to revisit this question. If you have the type of ADHD where you're anxious, this will help. If you have the type where you're spaced out, this will make you worse. So this is an 11-year-old that listened to that Delta song that I just played. And he said, these are the questions we asked after each song. He said, it makes me feel calm and I feel like I'm drifting out of my chair. And I love this song too. And you can see the pipe organ brings that sort of ethereal sound to it. And the combination of the guitar and the pipe organ is just, I mean, people said after the concert, it was just magical. How did the song make you feel? He said, happy but mellow. And did you think of any images that came to mind while you were listening? Yes, someone strumming a guitar and something like this. And these are his little pictures of the strum. So cute. And did the song make you feel more energized or more relaxed, more relaxed? Would you listen to this song again? Yeah, especially when trying to fall asleep. That was awesome. So so we looked at his brain. So this is before listening to the music. These are three-dimensional maps that are analyses that I can do based on electroencephalograms. And roughly this blue means that these parts of his brain are not online. And these parts of his brain are all parts of the emotional centers of the brain. And then these little, see these little kind of light blue lines? These are how the messages are getting sent in the brain. So right now, these blue lines mean messages are not getting sent strongly enough, which means that, so this is the front of his brain, his frontal lobes are offline. So remember, frontal lobes are organizing, planning, keeping control of your emotions, kind of managing your life. And he's not making enough power in the front there. And then after listening to that song, you can see all the blue here. See how it's all normalized? We still have one that's out, but this is like a 5-minute song. Look how much it changed his brain. So you can see much improvement. A lot of these blue lines have disappeared and normalized. And so just from listening to this one song, we actually see changes in the brain. And he felt it too, because he said, I feel more peaceful and more calm, and I feel like I'm floating out of my chair. I did not anticipate the frontal lobes would come more back online. And I think that's a really interesting finding. I want to do some more work in that area because, you know, you would think this kid might be more spaced out, but he's actually more alert and functioning better. Now, this is a kid with anxiety, not with ADHD. All right.
One more question for you. It
Yeah.
says, is there a place where you can find the hertz ranges to improve each of these brainwaves areas so you can find additional music to integrate?
Wow, I love that question, and I do not know the answer to that. There certainly are, if you go to YouTube, there's this sort of frequency-based music or frequency-based sounds and kind of music that's been around a long time, but I'm not aware of anyone that's actually done what we have done in terms of actually creating melodic music. And the reason I felt strongly about doing that is I want something that people will listen to again, right? If there's a piece of music you like, you'll listen to it again. Sometimes kids are not so excited about just listening to a frequency, but you can find those on YouTube. And other than that, I don't know of anybody that's doing exactly what we're doing here. But we do hope to have additional albums in the future, so stay tuned. Was there another one, Jay?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. So, can you make somebody worse with music? Of course you can. Yes. Now we know we can make somebody better with music. We can make someone works with music. So this is a college student actually who came in, and he was quite anxious and super bright guy, just wonderful guy. And he said, I like rap music. And I said, well, let's see what rap music is doing to your brain. So the top line, remember, this is slow waves to fast waves. So this is delta, theta, alpha, beta, and high beta. Slow waves to fast waves. So this is before listening to rap music. And remember, high beta is the wave associated with anxiety, and beta too, but mostly high beta. So after listening to rap music on this line, he actually did create more waves relating to anxiety. And this little red dot here is over a part of the brain called the posterior cingulate, which is attentional and emotional regulation. And this area became more dysregulated after listening to rap music. What's interesting to me is that, see, he's making excess theta here, which is that sort of space out wave, and that actually improved. And so I think that's one reason he liked it, because it made him more alert, but the trade-off was not good for him. And so once I saw this, I said, hey, let's talk about other types of music that might work better for your particular brain. So yeah, you have to watch out. Now to the practical part here. How can you use this? So if you work with kids one-on-one, so you're a school counselor or you're a teacher or you are a school psychologist, one thing I would really suggest is you think about introducing music into your conversations with kids. If you have an intake form, you should ask the question, do you listen to music? What type of music do you listen to? How much time do you spend listening to music? If you're a cook and you happen to chit chat with the student, it's a great conversation starter. Hey, do you listen to music? What do you like to listen to? It creates a bond immediately. And I did have a counselor tell me that she'd had a high school kid she'd been struggling with for years, not for years, for months, couldn't get her to talk. And she came to our workshop, and after the workshop, they talked. She said, oh, I never thought about bringing up music. And she said it changed everything. Her therapeutic alliance just went from nothing to almost 100%. So ask those questions and then listen to their music, engage in their music, have them show you songs they like, create a playlist, etc. And there's another aspect to this I can talk about in terms of underachievement if people are interested in that in the question area. And then share some of this music or similar music with them, discuss how it makes them feel. And sort of interesting, and Jay mentioned to me, he said he started playing some of Calum's music when he was working in the classroom, and the kids didn't like it at first. And then after a while, they liked it. And what's really interesting is a couple weeks ago, a really cool article came out that suggests that people don't have to like the music in order for it to work. And as positive effects take place, the liking for the music may happen later. So somebody might go, this isn't my style of music, but actually, if they listen to it, they will still respond to it. Help
And this
them find
is
the
similar to
music
what
that,
you mentioned earlier, Barbara, was the kids wanted to listen to rap music. And I said, no, we're going to play Calum today. And again, it went from, I don't really want to hear this to when they would walk in, weeks later, they were saying, can you put Calum on? So it was pretty crazy.
yeah, I should have picked that example specifically for you. Help them find the music that helps them and doesn't worsen the problem. And if you're in a classroom situation, play music to create the energy that you want to create in the classroom or the lunchroom or the gym. So think about, man, when kids are coming to lunch, they're like off the wall. So you don't necessarily want to go clear to the calming end of things, but you want to bring that energy level down just a tad. So you're going to play something more in the middle range. And generally speaking, you want to transition from what the group is currently experiencing to what you want them to experience. In other words, catch the brain where it is and then modulate it to the desired state. And let me give you an example. If you've just broken up with somebody, you don't want to listen to Don't Worry, Be Happy, right? You want to listen to a breakup song because it catches you where you are. But if it has a hopeful message at the end, like I will survive or I can go on, that's what you want to do. So you want to match the state and then then slowly bring that state down to where you want it to be. Don't be afraid to experiment and watch the results on your particular group. We don't have good data to tell us exactly how to do this, but good observation and persistence, because we know the brain and body are responding so strongly to music. Good observation and persistence are your friend. Read the body language and the results of your choices. Don't assume. And because you're like, oh, these people are hyper, I'm going to play them a really calming song. If it doesn't work, try something else. Don't get stuck that, oh, I should do this or I should do that. School nurses and other people who get counselors and psychologists, you see this too. You're interacting with students at a vulnerable time. Generally in the nurse's office, you'd want to play calming music that brings down the nervous system, lets the nervous system relax and helps the immune system activate. When the nervous system goes up in activation, there's amazing studies on this. It actually suppresses the immune system. So when you get sick, the calmer you can be, the more likely your immune system is to activate in an optimal way. Talk about the lunchroom. So here we go. Good wrap up here. You now know there's strong data that music affects the brain and the body. Please use it. The Jay and the State Department has made this available to you, at least one for each district, and you can certainly buy it yourself if you want to. Again, I don't benefit from it in any financial way. Choose music that catches students where they are and leads them to a more regulated place. Recognize individual differences. Students with, quotes, ADHD, which is a huge garbage category, may need customized intervention. And please feel free to contact me with questions or if you're interested in further training. My email's drbminton@gmail.com. And my music website is drbarbermintonmusic.com. You can contact me through there. I also have my regular psychology website is drbarbminton.com. So thank you for coming. I'm so glad so many of you showed up, and I hope to see you and be in contact with you in the future. So let me play the most calming song. So this was the song that people were just like, I melted into the chair. And then I'll play the most activating song, or at least parts of it. I'll play the most activating song that created the highest amount of beta. And then I'll close with the title track, Tassacal. Tassacal, Tasakaal is the name of the album, and Tassacal means balance in Estonian. So Calum has done concerts over in Estonia, and when we were talking about a title for the album, where I was like, well, it'd be nice to have something that really talks about balance because that's what we're trying to create. And so that's the name. He found that in Estonian, and I think it's kind of a cool name. So yeah, so this is the most relaxing song on the entire album. song that makes the most beta, the most activating song. Okay, that gives you a sense of those two songs. And then Jalen, do you
Couple
have
questions real quick
tests?
before you go
Oh, yeah.
to another one. One was, would you play this activating song before or during the students' work?
I I would probably go for something more in the middle range. I think if I had a student with ADHD that was one of those space out ADHD students, I'd put this on earphones and let them listen to it while they worked. But I think the problem with playing this for an entire class, if you've already got kids that are too amped, it's going to drive them up even higher. So I would probably play something more in the middle range, like that, even that resilience song or the nature song, which is the one that kind of had the country feel to it, or one called we have one called Echoes of Light. That would be a good one too. And once you get that booklet, I put the title of the song and then I put which wave it affected, theta, alpha, beta, and then a comment from one of the listeners on it. So you'll be able to look at that and make some choices. But most important thing is try something and be a good observer of what's happening.
Next question was, did you allude to some information about underachievement?
Yeah, so what's really interesting, there's oh man, there's so many interesting things on this, but when you talk about music to kids, so one of the really um, fascinating studies was actually done on underachievement of gifted kids. So these are gifted kids that are getting D's and F's in their courses because they're just completely unengaged. And what they found is that if the student felt that a teacher or another adult, such as a mentor or a counselor or a school psychologist or the custodian, was interested in them and engaged with them, that their achievement improved. And it didn't even actually matter if that person really was engaged with them. It only mattered that they thought the person was engaged with them. And one way to engage with a student is to talk with them about music because, and it's, it's a little because music creates such a social connection and a social bond. And if you play some music and listen to it with your students, your brains are going to start to entrain to each other. That's going to make a connection between that student and you, and that is going to help their achievement. If you look at what the literature says, that's what we would expect. And it's so cool to think of the fact that just spending 5 minutes with somebody and listening to some music might help them kind of change their whole attitude towards what's going on in their educational setting. Now, I don't think one conversation is going to change everything, right? But it's certainly not going to hurt. Okay, here's the live one. So I'm playing pipe organ. He's playing the harp guitar. Hopefully it'll start. There you go.
So again, I want to thank everybody for coming. We're a few minutes over. We did have one comment really quick. Barbara said, my 7-year-old just said this is very relaxing. So, but
That's what we're after. Right. Love to hear from people. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's the end of the day. You're wonderful. Thanks for being such a great audience.